Good evening, and welcome to Loveworld USA News. I'm Joel Richard, and first a quick look at the top stories this evening. GOP divided over Senate lawsuit provision in a government shutdown bill. New prosecutor takes over Trump Georgia election case after Fani Willis disqualified. Anti-ICE protesters clash with officers outside Chicago immigration facility. President Trump directs DOJ to investigate Epstein's ties to Democrats and major banks. BBC apologizes to President Trump over edited January 6 speech and documentary. And now to the news. A provision in the bill that ended the government shutdown has created sharp divisions among Republicans. The clause allows senators whose phone records were subpoenaed in former special counsel Jack Smith's Arctic Frost investigation to sue the federal government for up to $500,000. House Republicans said they were unaware of the addition before passage, with Appropriations Chair Tom Cole calling it a breach of trust after it was inserted by Senate Minority Leader John Thune and approved by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Several House Republicans, including Representatives Chip Roy and Greg Steube, criticized the measure for using taxpayer funds to compensate senators. Representative John Rose introduced legislation to repeal the provision, calling it an unfair benefit for lawmakers while excluding others, including President Trump. House Speaker Mike Johnson said he was surprised and frustrated by the clause's inclusion and confirmed the repeal votes will be held next week. Now, some senators, such as Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz, supported the measure, saying it would deter the Justice Department from targeting members of Congress without notice. Others, including Senators Dan Sullivan and Ron Johnson, said they were unaware of the clause before the bill's release and have no plans to sue. Senator Marsha Blackburn said she will seek a declaratory judgment instead of a financial damages. The measure also drew bipartisan criticism in the Senate. Senator Martin Heinrich said he was furious. It was added without consultation, calling it an example of poor legislative transparency. Now, the House is expected to vote on repeal next week in an effort to restore unity within the GOP after the dispute exposed divisions between Senate and House Republicans. Watch this.
Said earlier that you would repeal that FBI provision that's in the bill right now. Do you have assurances from Leader Thune that he will bring it up in the Senate?
I did call Leader Thune this morning. I want to say that he's a principled leader. I've enjoyed working with him. We've had a great working relationship and a good friendship. He's a trustworthy, honest broker. And that's why I was so surprised when we found out about that provision. It was put in our clean CR at the last moment. I'm just be honest, I'm very transparent with you all. I was very angry about it. I was. And a lot of my members called me and said, did you know about it? We had no idea. That was dropped in at the last minute. And I did not appreciate that, nor did most of the House members. Many of them are very angry about that. So we will be bringing that up. We'll probably pass it on suspension early next week, and we'll send it over to the Senate. I had a conversation with Leader Thune early this morning about it. I think he regretted the way it was done, and we had an honest conversation about that. I didn't ask him for any commitment at that time because I had a lot on my plate today, and I've been busy ever since that conversation we had early this morning. But I'm going to speak as truthfully to him as I am to all of you and tell you that I think that was way out of line. I don't think that was a smart thing to do. I don't think it was the right thing to do, and the House is going to reverse it. We're going to repeal that, and I'm going to expect our colleagues in the Senate to do the same thing.
Peter Skandalakis, head of the Georgia Prosecuting Attorneys Council, announced today that he has appointed himself to oversee the Georgia election case against President Donald Trump and several co-defendants after Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis was disqualified. Skandalakis said he decided to assume responsibility after being unable to find another prosecutor willing to take on the complex case. Several prosecutors were contacted, and while all were respectful and professional, each declined the appointment, he said, adding that the public has a legitimate interest in the outcome and that it was important the case not be dismissed due to lack of prosecution. Now, Willis brought racketeering and other charges in August 2023 against President Trump and 18 co-defendants for alleged interference in the 2020 election, but the case was reduced significantly following plea deals and dropped charges. The Georgia Court of Appeals later removed Willis from the case after finding she had an undisclosed relationship with her lead prosecutor, Nathan Wade, creating a conflict of interest. Now, President Trump recently issued federal pardons for several allies connected to 2020 election-related cases, but those do not affect state-level prosecutions. The president's attorney, Steve Siddall, said he expects the Georgia case to be dismissed. calling it a politically charged prosecution that must come to an end. Let's take a look.
The election interference case against Donald Trump and originally 18 co-defendants quickly consumed the Fulton County DA's office when DA Fani Willis was forced off the case after engaging in a relationship with then Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade, veteran prosecutor Pete Skandalakis, who led the state's prosecuting attorneys council, had to find a replacement. The only volunteer he says he could find was himself.
I'm glad I'm not Pete. I don't envy his job at all.
Former DeKalb County DA Robert James says Skandalakis will have to analyze 8 terabytes plus more than 100 boxes of evidence against Trump and his remaining 14 co-defendants from an office ill-staffed for such a job.
In other news, law enforcement officers clashed with demonstrators outside an ICE facility in Broadview, Illinois yesterday, leading to multiple arrests after protesters blocked traffic and ignored orders to disperse. Video from the scene showed scuffles between protesters and officers from the Illinois State Police and federal agencies. Officials confirmed that 21 people, 12 men and 9 women, were arrested, while several officers sustained minor injuries. Now, the demonstration, part of ongoing protests against ICE operations in the Chicago area, temporarily disrupted traffic near the facility about 12 miles west of downtown. Protesters carried signs reading "God demands freedom" and "Protest is patriotic," with some even attempting to move past concrete barriers toward the facility before being stopped by the police. By late afternoon, the situation had calmed, and no further arrests were reported. The protests occurred days after a federal judge ordered the release of more than 600 detainees from the Broadview ICE Processing Center, ruling that many had been unlawfully detained. The order, part of a class action case, cited unsafe and unsanitary conditions and required ICE to place eligible detainees in alternative supervision programs by November 21st. The ruling marks just one of the largest ordered releases of immigration detainees in Illinois in recent years. In other news tonight, President Donald Trump has announced that he has instructed Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice to open an investigation into the late financier Jeffrey Epstein's connections to several prominent Democrats in major financial institutions. In a post on Truth Social, President Trump said the probe would focus on Epstein's involvement and relationship with Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, J.P. Morgan Chase, and many others, describing it as an effort to uncover what he called the Democrats' Epstein hoax. He claimed records show that several of the named individuals spent large portions of their life with Epstein and on his island. The announcement follows the release of previously unseen emails by House Oversight Committee Democrats earlier this week. The emails included exchanges between Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and writer Michael Wolff, referencing President Trump and other public figures. Democrats called for the full release of Epstein-related documents, while the White House accused them of selectively leaking material to smear the president. J.P. Morgan Chase spokesperson Trish Wexler said the bank regretted any past dealings with Epstein, but stressed that it had cut ties with him years before his 2019 arrest, adding that the government had damning information about his crimes and failed to share it. Now, the renewed focus on Epstein's political and financial connections came as President Trump signed a bill ending the 43-day government shutdown, the longest in U.S. history. The president accused Democrats of reviving the Epstein controversy to distract from what he called their shutdown failure. Attorney General Bondi has not yet released a timeline for the investigation. Meanwhile, both Republican and Democratic members of the House Oversight Committee continue to call for the release of all remaining files related to Epstein's activities and associates. Let's take a look.
After days of ignoring questions about his friendship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, President Trump now says he will ask Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate Epstein's involvement with prominent Democrats, including former President Bill Clinton, former Harvard President Larry Summers, plus financial institutions. The president blames Democrats for what he calls the Epstein hoax and criticizes some Republicans as weak for agreeing with them. The lengthy social media post came after House Speaker Mike Johnson announced he will hold a vote next week on whether to require the Justice Department to release all of its Epstein files.
The news will be back after this break.
In a world that's always moving, staying connected to the right resources makes all the difference. Welcome to the Loveworld App Store, the digital home of everything that powers your journey in the Loveworld nation. Here, discovery is simple and meaningful. With our categories section, you can explore a wide range of apps designed to enrich your spirit.
I'm praying specially for you. You that have been sick. You need a miracle.
On the Loveworld App Store, you can access all your favorite apps, such as Healing School app, King's Chat, PCDL, Rhapsody app, Love Tunes, SBs, Loveworld Worship, Herald app, Alpha TV, King's View, C-Flix, Hello Loveworld, PCDL for Kids, King's Conference, and so much more. Each application is created to serve a unique purpose and bring you closer to a life of impact. Explore My App feature, where your most valued tools are gathered in one convenient place. It's your personalized hub, ready whenever you are. The Loveworld App Store is more than a collection of apps. It's a vibrant ecosystem built to inspire faith, foster connection, and equip you for impact. Visit www.lwappstore.com to download the app on your device. Explore a world where purpose meets technology. Loveworld App Store. All your world in one place.
Welcome back. The BBC has issued a formal apology to President Donald Trump for editing portions of his January 6, 2021 speech in his documentary, Trump, A Second Chance. The British broadcaster said it sincerely regrets how the video was edited, though it rejected claims that the program was defamatory. BBC Chair Samuel Shaw sent a personal letter to the White House apologizing for the edited segment, which combined 3 separate parts of Trump's speech. The network confirmed it will now rebroadcast the episode on any of its platforms. The apology followed a legal threat from Trump's attorneys, who demanded a retraction, a public apology, and $1 billion in damages. The BBC's legal team responded that the documentary did not air in the U.S., caused no measurable harm, and that the edits were made to shorten the speech, not to mislead viewers. The broadcaster also argued that political commentary in matters of public interest are protected under U.S. free speech laws. The controversy led to the resignations of BBC Director General Tim Davie and Head of News Deborah Turness. In separate letters to staff, both acknowledged responsibility for errors made in the editing process, but wholly denied allegations of institutional bias within the organization. Davie said his decision to step down was voluntary, citing the need for accountability and an orderly leadership transition. Watch this.
The British Broadcasting Corporation, or BBC, sent a personal apology to President Trump on Thursday, but said they believe there is no legal basis for Trump to sue the public broadcaster over a documentary Trump's lawyers called defamatory. The BBC edit created the false impression that Trump had called for violence ahead of the January 6th Capitol breach. Speaking to the BBC, British Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy said it is right the BBC apologised.
I am confident that they've already started the work to get not just the right processes in place to make sure this doesn't happen again and get consistency across the board, but also to get the right mix of experience at the top of the organisation to make sure that those high journalistic standards are well understood at the top of the organisation and are upheld.
Last Sunday, Trump's lawyers threatened to sue the BBC for damages of up to $1 billion unless it withdrew the documentary, apologised to the president, and compensated him for financial and reputational harm. The BBC said the splicing of the speech was a, quote, error of judgment. It has withdrawn the documentary and apologised, but is refusing to pay compensation.
In a stellar piece of legislation, the United States and Switzerland have reached a new trade agreement to reduce tariffs on Swiss goods to 15%, U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Geer announced today. The deal also includes a commitment from Swiss companies to invest about $200 billion in the United States economy by the end of 2028, with a focus on manufacturing, education, and workforce training. Greer said the agreement, which has been in development since April this year, will bring new Swiss investments in pharmaceuticals, gold refining, and railway equipment manufacturing to the United States. They're going to send a lot of manufacturing here to the United States, Greer said, adding that details would be published on the White House website later in the day. Now, under the new terms, tariffs on Swiss goods will align with those applied to imports from the European Union. Greer said the deal allows the United States to maintain a modest tariff while Switzerland manages its trade surplus through expanded production in America. Swiss pharmaceutical giant Roche has already pledged $50 billion in U.S. investments as part of the broader arrangement. The Swiss government said the tariff reduction would stabilize bilateral trade relations and have a positive effect on its export-driven economy. The agreement reverses a 39% tariff rate the United States imposed in July after earlier negotiations failed. Those tariffs had heavily impacted Swiss industries, leading officials to downgrade the country's economic growth outlook for 2026. But following Friday's announcement, the Swiss franc strengthened by 0.4% against the US dollar. Let's take a look.
Working with the Swiss, what we've done is we've identified the areas and the reasons why we have a big deficit with them in goods, and it really boils down to things like pharmaceuticals, gold, right, trade in gold, and a handful of other things. And so the Swiss, as part of their agreement, they've said we are going to have $200 billion in investment, during President Trump's term, starting with about $70 billion investment next year, and it will be in these areas. We expect that the Swiss will have a tariff rate similar to what the EU has, a 15% rate, all in.
On the business front, Walmart CEO Doug McMillon, who guided the world's largest retailer through a decade of rapid technological transformation and strong financial growth, will retire early next year at age 59. John Furner, 51, head of Walmart's U.S. operations, will succeed him on February 1st, 2026. Now, McMillon, who has spent 40 years with the company since joining as a summer associate in 1984, will remain as an advisor for 1 year following his retirement. Walmart shares fell about 3% in pre-market trading following the surprise announcement. During his tenure as CEO since 2014, McMillon reshaped Walmart into a digital-first retailer while maintaining its low-cost appeal. He invested heavily in wages, employee education, and automation, leading to significant gains in morale and productivity. Under his leadership, annual revenue climbed from $485.7 billion to $681 billion, and the company's share price quadrupled. McMillon also oversaw major policy shifts, including ending sales of certain ammunition types after a 2019 mass shooting, reducing Walmart's carbon footprint and positioning the company as a leading private sector employer committed to sustainability and worker advancement. Walmart chairman Greg Penner praised McMillon for leading a comprehensive transformation that made the company stronger, more innovative, and better aligned with its purpose to help people save money and live better. Furner, who began as an hourly worker in a Bentonville store in 1993, has held multiple leadership roles across Walmart's global operations, including president and CEO of Sam's Club. His promotion comes as retailers face a challenging economic climate marked by tariff uncertainty, fluctuating consumer demand, and tightening labor conditions. McMillon's leadership helped Walmart expand its e-commerce and delivery operations, embrace artificial intelligence and logistics, and integrate sustainability into its business model, milestones that have positioned the company to remain competitive in an evolving retail landscape. Watch this.
Walmart announced that CEO Doug McMillon will retire next year after more than a decade leading the retail giant, having joined the company in 1984 as an hourly associate and risen through all divisions, including US, International, and Sam's Club. Under his leadership, Walmart's stock increased 323%, outperforming the S&P 500. McMillon will be succeeded by John Furner.
We'll be back with more news after this break. Stay with us.
It's easy to set up, quick to start, and packed with value. Smarter streaming starts here with the Alpha TV Stick. Just plug and stream anytime, anywhere. Discover a curated lineup of content designed to inspire, live broadcasts and global events, inspirational films and series, children's programming, healing and teaching sessions, all on demand. With millions of downloads worldwide, the Alpha TV app is transforming lives across the globe. And now, we're on a mission to reach 1 billion downloads of the Alpha TV app, and you can be part of it. Join the global wave with 1 billion Alpha TV app downloads worldwide. Bring the higher life into every home. Order your Alpha TV stick today and experience smarter streaming. Alpha, the higher life is here.
We received news in Middle East tonight. Iranian forces seized a Marshall Islands flagged oil tanker, the Talara, as it passed through the Strait of Hormuz tonight, marking the first such incident in months in one of the world's most critical maritime routes. The tanker was reportedly redirected into Iranian territorial waters while en route from Ajman, United Arab Emirates, to Singapore. Now, according to U.S. defense officials, the Talara was intercepted by 3 small Iranian boats. A U.S. Navy MQ-4C Triton drone monitored the incident from above for several hours, flight tracking data showed. The British military's United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Center said the event appeared to involve state activity. Cyprus-based Columbia Ship Management, which manages the vessel, said it had lost contact with the ship and was working with authorities to ensure the crew's safety. The seizure comes as tensions remain high following a 12-day war between Iran and Israel in June and subsequent U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. Tehran has not commented on the latest incident, though officials have repeatedly warned that Iran could target shipping in retaliation for recent attacks. Now, Iran has previously been accused of multiple tanker seizures and maritime attacks, including Limpet mine incident in 2019 and a drone strike on an Israeli-linked vessel in 2021. The Strait of Hormuz handles about 20% of the world's traded oil, and the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet, based in Bahrain, regularly patrols the region to maintain open passage for global shipping. Let's take a look.
Iran seized the Marshall Islands flagged oil tanker Talara in the Strait of Hormuz on Friday, diverting it into Iranian territorial waters in the first such interdiction in months. The tanker, traveling from the UAE to Singapore, was intercepted by Iranian forces as a U.S. Navy surveillance drone monitored the incident. This, according to a U.S. official. Maritime security agencies, including the United Kingdom's UK MTO, acknowledged the event as possible state activity, while the ship's management company said it lost contact with the vessel and is working to ensure the crew's safety. The seizure follows escalating regional tensions after a 12-day war between Iran and Israel and a history of Iranian attacks and detentions of commercial vessels, the Associated Press has reported. Iran has long threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, a critical checkpoint for global oil shipments, while the United States' Navy's 5th Fleet continues to patrol the area to maintain open passage.
More news on the international front. Roughly 100 indigenous demonstrators blocked the main entrance to the COP30 United Nations Climate Conference in Belém, Brazil, today morning, halting entry for about 90 minutes before ending their protests following a discussion with Summit President Ender Correa do Lago. The peaceful demonstration, led by members of the Munduruku people, called for stronger indigenous rights protections and a rejection of projects they say threaten the Amazon rainforest. Protesters formed a human chain chanting, "No one enters, no one leaves," as security forces prevented them from entering the venue. There were no reports of violence. Correa do Lago met the group at a barricade, speaking with them while holding a protester's baby. The exchange ended with both sides walking away together and the gates reopening shortly after 9:30 a.m. The Munduruku Ipereg Ayu movement said the protests sought a meeting with President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, demanding the cancellation of river development and railway projects, creating demarcation of indigenous territories, and opposition to deforestation-linked carbon credits. "Our forest is not for sale. We are the ones who protect the climate," the group said in a statement. Conference organizers rerouted delegates through a side entrance, and UN officials described the protests as peaceful. Environmental advocates at the summit said the demonstration reflected frustration among indigenous leaders who have seen limited progress despite years of international climate pledges. The incident followed another protest early in the week in which indigenous activists clashed with security at the same venue. Larger demonstrations are expected over the weekend as COP30 enters its second week. Let's take a look.
The Great March of Forest Peoples. On the streets of Belém, indigenous protesters wore mining head torches to symbolize the extraction industry threatening their homes.
We want the space to speak for a more just, fair and equal society, a society that includes us.
Meanwhile, inside the COP30 meeting rooms, Indigenous representatives made their voices heard, calling for land rights, biodiversity protection and the end of fossil fuels.
Just before we end the news, a quick look at tomorrow's weather forecast. And to end the news, a quick recap of the top headlines. GOP divided over Senate lawsuit provision and government shutdown bill. New prosecutor takes over Trump Georgia election case after Fani Willis disqualified. Anti-ICE protesters clash with officers outside Chicago immigration facility. President Trump directs DOJ to investigate Epstein's ties to Democrats and major banks. And the BBC apologizes to President Trump over edited January 6 speech in documentary. And that's all the news we have for you tonight. Join us at the same time tomorrow for more news. I'm Joel Richards signing off. God bless you, God bless our armed forces, and God bless these United States of America.